Dun, 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 dun. Hey, everybody, D here, and welcome to our continuing reviews of Marvel's Secret Invasion. The Skrulls are coming! Today, of course, we were diving into episode 3, Betrayed. So, spoiler warning, of course. I know I usually don't say that beginning, but I figure if you're here to watch a review, you understand we're going to be talking spoilers. And of course, joining me as he does every week from Smirking Reviews, it's Agent Stone.
What's up, everybody? Just to keep this tight, good to be here. Justice for Maria.
Yeah. Excellent. We got to keep the theme going. And of course, joining us this week, always excited to have him from Enchantment of Eternity, it's Marc.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. Great to talk about this show.
Perfect. So, definitely want to say thanks to everybody joining us live in the chat now. Everyone joining us in the archive. Always appreciate you being part of our discussion. And of course, if you do like it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications. There's all these buttons down here. Just hit them all. Hit all the buttons, and we'll be doing great. All right. So this week, episode 3, Betrayed. A little bit of a shorter episode than we've had in the past two. I know last week, I think we were talking about how excited we were. These were like full hour-long episodes. And this is about 10 or 15 minutes shorter. I personally did sort of feel that. There's a lot of story you can squeeze into 10, 15 minutes. But I think they've been ending these at the right points. They definitely have their little cliffhangers that they're going on. But instead of me just rambling as I normally do, let's toss things down to Marc here first. Marc, since you're just joining us, what have you been thinking about this series so far? Has it been meeting your expectations? Is it going in a direction you're finding interesting? Not? And then give me your thoughts on tonight's episode specifically.
Well, I didn't really know what to think of this show. I don't know if I would say my expectations were high, but I was, hoping this would be a good Marvel show. And so far, I've been pretty impressed. Now, I will say I haven't been blown away, but I haven't been let down either. It tends to be going the Marvel espionage spy route in the vein of movies like Winter Soldier, Black Widow, stuff like that. And in that regard, I think it's doing a really good job. It's not like certain movies which will go maybe not unnamed Captain America Civil War, which I think had so many plot holes that really bothered me and annoyed me, where we haven't gotten to that territory here. So it seems solid, but it's not like blowing me away. It's something like Winter Soldier would. So a few things, like I don't like the fact that Nick Fury is coming off as kind of weak and ineffective. Like I expect more out of him, expect him to be more witty, more on top of things, a better sort of character. But I like the overall analogy they seem to be making, the way they went at it with the Skrulls, because when they first announced this concept of this show, I was like, but the Skrulls appeared to be good guys in Captain Marvel. They were just refugees, but they came at it at a different way, which felt very natural and sort of making a commentary on how refugees are treated and stuff like that, and how they feel like they've been mistreated and that they need to sort of fight back. And there's a radical faction amongst them, so it's not all the Skrulls, it's just a radical faction that's taken over. And there's a lot of like comparisons to real life terrorists and how they recruit people and how they thrive and stuff like that. So I've been finding those parallels very interesting. But yeah, I don't know. So, and I feel like they have a point with Nick Fury, that he kind of just used them for espionage and didn't really live up to their promise. So that makes me kind of almost on Team Skrull if they weren't trying to wipe out all of humanity. But still, it makes their storyline more interesting that they do actually have a point. But I wish we sort of got, because a lot of the talking about Nick Fury is about, oh, you left, you went on this space station, you're leaving us, everyone keeps mentioning you abandoned us, you go on this space station, but I don't really know why he went or what's the deal with that or any of that sort of thing. So I just wish that was explored more, and I wish we didn't. I don't know. Didn't like the direction we're going with Nick Fury being kind of getting into this episode in particular. I love the interaction between Nick Fury and Talos. They're back and forth, and I think Talos has a lot of really excellent points. And I like how Nick Fury had to kind of humble himself a few times with Talos and that sort of relationship they had. And I think it's probably my favorite episode so far, actually, of this series, because I like the main plot, the theme of betrayal, and how it was about what's the main terrorist guy who's taking over? Ravik, yeah, about him sort of weeding out who the spy was and how he's suspecting Gaia, and that you think it's about this massive plot to destroy UN plane, but he was like, yeah, I mean, that would have been nice, but actually my bigger goal was to find out who the damn traitor was, which was a shot. And of course they killed her, which I was so shocked because this is, a character played by Emilia Clarke, a fairly well-known actress. I thought they were going to keep her around longer, and they better not bring her back to life, because I think that would be cheesy and would undermine what they did in this episode. So yeah, I liked this episode. The one element that was introduced at the end of last week's episode that was brought over to this episode that I don't really care for is Nick Fury's wife being married to a Skrull, and they're kind of emulating that she's involved. She's a double agent somehow. I'm like, I just wish they wouldn't go in that direction. It just seems silly to me. And the one thing I will say is, by the end of the series, if we don't see at least one Avengers, one superhero, I'm going to be pissed off. I think I'm going to call the whole show a failure. They keep bringing them up and mentioning them. We need to see at least one, at least. In fact, I want to see Captain Marvel. They keep mentioning Captain Marvel, and it was from her movie that the Skrulls are from. I think they should show Captain Marvel, but I'm not holding my breath for that. But I think that would what would the show need. So I'm still iffy about where the show is going to go. I think for now, I think it's most likely I'm going to think this is a above average, pretty solid but not great show. I mean, that's how we're tracking so far, but it could get better, it could get worse. I'm here to see.
I'm sure Rhodey's really upset that you don't consider him an Avenger. Come on!
I mean, no, a super-powered Avenger, not Rhodey. And anyway, Rhodey's another one I forgot to mention because I don't like how they use them. I mean, sure, we saw Rhodey, but not in a superpower capacity, just to be like, you're fired. I mean, just being like the government stooge. I don't need a government stooge. I need a superpowered superhero to show up.
Sure.
Now, if he puts on the suit, maybe that would be good enough for me, but I would like to see at least one other superpowered character.
Yeah. I think kind of for a Marvel show, that does sort of make sense. It does feel like they're definitely doing a much more of an intimate story line, and like you said, really focusing on that relationship between Talos and Nick Fury. And I think this episode's title was very appropriate because it really deals with much of what's going on is a result of betrayal. The Skrulls feeling that Fury betrayed him, his wife feeling that he sort of betrayed their marriage.
Yeah.
Even Talos is betraying that friendship. And then, of course, we actually have the Gaia betraying, Gravik in here.
So I have a quick question for both of you, really quick. It's about the first episode.
Sure.
When it was, what's the guy? I can't even remember the actor's name. The guy, the CIA agent who was in Black Panther, and
Arthur Dent.
Florida. Arthur Dent.
Yeah.
What's his name?
It's leaving me now, and I just had it like on the tip of my tongue.
Remember, The Hobbit is what I call him.
Exactly. And Martin Freeman. Thank
Martin
you.
Freeman, yeah, that's who. Is this show saying that he was a Skrull the whole time?
Well, that's actually an interesting question because, okay, potential spoilers for Wakanda Forever, folks. I will throw this in because at the end of Wakanda Forever, Everett Ross, thank you, Bill Casey, in the chat. Everett gets arrested. So don't know if that was the whole thing, or in his arrest he was replaced at that point, because we don't know why he was out and why he seems to be having this, why he's working with Nick Fury, or Maria Hill was at that time, effectively. So that's one of the up in the air things, and I think it even comes into this point here with Rhodey is, okay, if Rhodey ends up being a Skrull, which kind of is implied by our final scene, how long has he been a Skrull? And I think we had brought up the leg braces that he was using originally when he'd gotten paralyzed. Definitely by Endgame, he didn't seem to have those anymore. He was just walking around. So at some point during those 5 years, was Rhodey replaced? So I don't think they're implying that he was always a Skrull, but they're definitely seem to implying or suggesting like at some point he was replaced, and when could that have been?
So is the real Ross dead, or?
No, he's being irradiated in Russia right now, because while Skrulls are immune to radiation in these old nuclear factories, the human beings they're storing there definitely are not. So
Yeah.
that's actually kind of a good question. I'm assuming we'll have to have some sort of resolve about that.
I hope they
people
do.
waking
I
up.
hope they just don't leave this open.
Yeah. So, Rob, what about you? What did you think about this week's episode? How was this riding the train for you so far?
Well, since everybody else has said everything else pretty succinctly, I'm going to be succinct too. Show is relying on the strength of its actors to carry its mediocre story across the finish line. Credits are best part of show. Week in, week out, I get lost in that horror show. And at this point, I blame Disney, the director and the writer. Everyone else is cool. Otherwise, I mean, I'm after all that being said, I enjoyed this episode because I'm trying to think about it when I originally watched it as, accept it for what it is, try not to hold it against it for what it isn't. But I still think that this is a mediocre show at this point, and the actors are the only thing keeping this show from being even less than mediocre. This was a shorter episode. All told, when you count everything else, you trim everything down, but actual show, you got about 33 minutes this week. And yeah, I mean, for me, I am now officially not looking forward to watching. If it wasn't on my day off, I would probably not be motivated to watch it at this point anymore.
All right, fair enough.
I can understand that perspective though, especially if you like read the comics, you had high expectations for it. I think part of the reason why I'm enjoying it is like I wasn't really expecting much from it.
I wasn't expecting the comic book. I was expecting a competent. No, that's not the right word. Just I was hoping for a show where the characters have influence over the plot, not vice versa. And that's what I'm getting here in spades. And I'm just not. I'm finding that not cool. But it's the performers in this show that are just stealing every bit of boring downtime. Everybody in this is great, even if some of these conversations, are like, why are they here or something, or like, what's the point of the dog conversation or whatever. But they're literally the best parts of the show, and for that, I can sit there and go, wow, that was a good scene. That's good conversation. I even wrote that, good conversation, mediocre story.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I think one of the things that it sounds like it's hitting both you, Rob, and Mark, is the shift of Nick Fury, because I think there's the expectation is this is Spy Master Nick Fury, coming back and now to deal with this, when they're really kind of taking the approach of this is kind of like the Nick Fury that walked away and just sort of gave it all up, and now is feeling like he's getting pushed back into the game, and he doesn't have his momentum with him. He doesn't have the story. He's finding all of these mistakes that he has made, these errors and stuff, which is not the kind of Nick Fury we're used to seeing.
Well, and I think my main problem with that storyline is I didn't think it was earned, as all this walking away, being on the space station was off screen, and we didn't see any of it. We're just being told, not shown. And,
right.
Yeah.
And they are taking their time and kind of filling in their blank. It does seem like every week they're giving a little bit more of the story behind of him leaving and what had happened. And I'm kind of hoping they get a good coverage of that story, since we haven't actually seen it yet, before the end of the series itself, so we can kind of trace all of that out. But that definitely seems to be the motivating factor for a lot of these actions, and it puts it all on Fury's shoulders there of the why this is happening, because of his actions in that, both treating the Skrulls, kind of not appreciating what they were doing for him, as Talos brings it beautifully in that car discussion, as well as not finding this home world. In which case, Mark, I have to completely agree with you, is we really should have a Carol Danvers showing up at the end going, all right, I finally found a place. I don't know if that might just like too easily clean up the problem.
And she seemed to disappear
Well,
for all this time. Could she not bother finding him a homeworld in all these years?
Well, and I think that's something that really does also need to get kind of covered by the end of this series, is find out all right, now I realize a lot of this is all retcon because of when Captain Marvel came in and when the Skrulls did in the linear storytelling of the MCU. But if you're going to do that and have them still around, you do got to kind of put up okay, so what the heck did happen over those 30 years?
Yeah,
I'll tell you what wasn't happening.
Yeah.
You want to know what wasn't happening? Because all these Skrull spies, and not a single one of them knew Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes, I heard that. Someone brought that up too.
Yeah. just gonna paper over that one for right now.
But I will say that I hope the show doesn't end with Captain Marvel or anyone showing up and being, oh, we found you a homeworld, here you go, problem solved. Oh, we'll just go off, because that seems like too easy of a fix. I think the ending needs to be a lot more.
But I think that scene will be there. It just won't be to resolve the situation. I think we'll get some variation on that.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the episode now that we've been talking for 20 minutes about what we thought of the whole series so far. And let's hit a few points. I'll touch on the opening with Beto and the whole graphic discussion with the council when we get to graphic in a second. But Vara as Nick Fury's wife. A real kind of, to me, interesting scene here. Again, reinforcing the betrayal of love in this sense, is the fact that, hey, living with new Nick Fury is tough, and I didn't put any illusions on this. And then you die, you're gone for 5 years, and then when you come back, you don't really come back, you take off again. And her kind of being a widow and grieving twice, I think it puts a really nice kind of emotional edge on this. And I know there's the discussion expectation of what's the connection with Gravik, but if you remember last week, Vara's the one who introduced Gravik to Nick Fury in Skrull form. So there does seem to be kind of a pre-established connection before really Fury became part of that picture, which does a kind of a nice job on complicating things. And also the fact that, I mean, kind of in the Hydra bit, that these are not official agents. They're not following, they're not under a command structure. They're not under anything like that, which allows them to have their little bit of romance. But I think it's another good thing reinforcing bit that, the Skrulls are basically Nick Fury's little back pocket secret that allows him, as Talos hits later on, to really expand. His rise in the ranks really picked up when he suddenly was able to get all this information and get all these extra connections and stuff that weren't really accessible to him before. And I know that you mentioned this wasn't really a subplot that interested you in too much, Marc, right?
Correct. And as far as this scene goes, I would say it would be a pretty good scene. It's, as Rob mentioned, good acting as always, and fairly good dialogue. And I like that it makes sense as like, how she felt betrayed by him for leaving him behind, and how she had to live her life and be his own person. And I would be very, very interested in this scene if it was earned in any way, shape, or form. But I feel so disconnected from these characters and from the situation. I was just not invested at all.
Sure. And we did get a nice little Marvel Easter egg here, I guess, when they did the flashback back in 96 when they were first getting together effectively. Vera slides this little envelope, something, and says, this will help with Dreykov's men, or keep Dreykov's men in line. Dreykov, of course, is the head of the Red Room, where the Black Widows were all trained, which, I don't know, I like having little Easter eggs, but it's like, dude, it's at least a decade before Black Widow gets recruited and almost 2 before you finally take him down. So it's a nice connection in universe, but obviously nothing really came of this because he just kept working for a couple decades longer, which, again, I like Easter eggs. It's a fun little bit and connection, but it doesn't really mean anything. Rob, what did you think of Vera Priscilla and her little connection here with Nick, and her being upset with him?
Well, I was just confused, man, because he calls her Vara, and then later he calls her Scylla.
Yeah.
And I was like, who the hell is Scylla? Which one of those people? Like, who is Vara then? Like, so they're the same person?
Vara's the Skrull. Priscilla is her human cover, effectively.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought maybe somebody screwed up in editing or something. I was just like, because I got to remember now, this is how deep they are. They got to be like calling each other by their. Okay. I completely forgot about the human names. And that little just bit of confusion was more interesting to me than what was going on. Because it just confirmed to me, because look at it. Since this episode's been on for a day, I have had these great conversations with people about what we think was going on. Like, I think, a couple of days prior to this new episode, we were discussing it. And they were all just amazing conversations about what could possibly be going on and all the different ways, this, that, and the other. And then this episode just confirms, like, just tore down every single one of those great things that this show could have been, or direction this show could have been going in, by just going, no, this is really what's happening. There's no, it's straightforward. There's no, there's not going to be a twist here about any of it. Like, I was hoping for some kind of thing, like maybe he's a freaking Skrull, like maybe that's how deep this goes. And we found ways to make it all work without doing that many mental gymnastics. And now it's just old man Nick Fury with his wife lying about retirement. It's just so exciting.
Well, Rob, if we haven't learned anything from doing these reviews, it's that our speculation is always going to be much more complex than anything that they actually end up doing.
That's one of the most disappointing things, though, is now I've just given up at that are going to give me anything. That as many little like twists that they'll try to throw in to like wake me up, uh, it's still going to be really just straightforward. And that's what this episode to me confirmed was just no. This is exactly what it is. Do not expect any kind of big old like revelations by the end. It's just gonna play out. Like so, think of the most boring spy movie stuff you've seen a million times, folks, and that's how it's gonna go. Except everybody, it's with Skrulls. Ooh.
Well, they also have no problem killing people, as we will eventually get to when we talk about Gaia's whole scene.
Well, all right. So, but with this scene, we had that phone call that she receives, and
Right.
it was so obvious that there was something up. The way she's like, "Oh, I don't have that information right now," or something. It's like, all right, she's like working for someone, and Nick Fury seems incompetent for not really picking up. I mean, he seemed a little suspicious, but I mean, come on, that was like screaming in your face. Why didn't he address it right then? Like, I don't know. The scene bothered me.
This show is full of people that we can obviously tell they all know what's going on, and the other person knows that person knows too. And every scene, everybody's like thinking they're hiding a secret that the other one knows, and we see it. It's so obvious. I don't. Your spy shows aren't supposed to be like it's like spy versus spy, black hat, white hat. I know who's the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like that's what I mean by straightforward. This is not like this is for if you're 10 and you've never seen a spy show and you like Nick Fury and you like anything MC, you're gonna be like, what? Oh my god! Just your mind's gonna be little. Your 10-year-old mind's gonna be blown, man. And I wish I was that 10-year-old boy or girl or whatever to just enjoy it like that.
Hey, Nick stared at the phone sitting on the counter, so obviously that meant that he totally went through it after the camera turned off. Which I think we can sort of imply with what his conversation ends up being with Talos a little bit later, is I think he did actually end up looking at the phone or whatever she is in the next room, because he does come in afterwards talking about, I have, well, the thing is, did he get it off the phone call or from his own intuition when he starts saying, I have a lead on a Skrull high up in the U.S. government that's currently in London? There's really only one person that we've been introduced that could possibly be that character. But was that who was on the phone then or not? I think we can sort of imply that. But yeah, it's definitely like, yes, you are successfully hiding your betrayal here or your subterfuge. I, Nick Fury, master of spycraft, totally didn't see that right now in front of my face. Someone also not accepting what's going on right in front of his face is, in fact, Gravik, though, with his little encounter with Gaia, who tries to tell him that she's a much better liar than, was it Brogan or whatever, the guy that was captured and ended up getting killed. Again, this, in some way, kind of sets things off for Gravik's little spy hunt, because it doesn't look like he's convinced by her lies. I do appreciate that as a liar, Gaia maintains that eye contact and isn't like, no, it totally wasn't me. No, it was him. I do like the fact that, at least as written, she is very much dedicated to whatever her role is in this. But I think it's also pretty obvious later on when he's like, all right, come with me. And they're driving up to the meeting with Talos. And he just conveniently gets the phone call. Yes, Flight 819 that's about to intercept with Neptune. That's perfect. That'll be at 2200 hours. But it's all a secret. Keep it hush, hush. Shh. It was, again, that's another one. If you haven't seen anything like this before, you may be surprised. Otherwise, it is a total obvious. And she captures that hook like straight on. which, you know, a little disappointing in that sense, but I do get it. I do appreciate the old flip phone styling that she's doing. You got to hold the button down to get to the third letter in order to move around. Haven't seen that in like 20 years. Do they? I guess they still make those. That's for hipsters or something, right? Well, let's get to the Talos graphic scene. I think that's a lot more. There's a little bit more meat going on there.
I had one thing to say about that scene.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea to convince someone that you're not betraying them by saying you're a really good liar. That's probably a bad tactic. That's the first thing I thought when saying that. And also, it was super obvious that Gravik was suspicious of her.
Yeah.
Like, when he left the room, she was like, ooh, sighed. I'm like, no, he don't sigh. He totally suspects you. I mean, that's totally obvious. But anyway.
Yeah. Don't go for the obvious bait that's about to be dropped in front of you. You wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, the whole Gravik Talos encounter, which we got kind of hints on in the previews when we get the realization that everybody in the cafeteria having lunch is a Skrull, and Talos is all by himself. The one thing that I really liked about this, which I think continued on when we see the Nick Fury engagements as well, Talos is really a strong character. I love the back and forth because Gravik is committed to his viewpoint of humanity, and look how ridiculous it is, and look at the difference between the leaders and the soldiers. I'm the soldier, you know. He's very dedicated to his plan of attack. Even threatening Talos outright, like, man, it would be so much better off if I just killed you right now. Wouldn't that be better? But this isn't that usual kind of like negotiation back and forth. Talos is pretty much throwing just vitriol straight back at him. And I really liked seeing that character of Ben Mendelsohn, really that source of strength. I think he had said it like last episode, like, I've already lost everything. Soren's dead. I don't care. And I think this is a good follow-up of this. Because it is that kind of belief on you think you can get humanity, but you obviously haven't been paying attention that these are the people that get stronger the more that you stand up to them versus anything else, which I really loved. So I love the back and forth for them. I love the difference in their philosophy and the fact neither one was really backing down or apologizing from it. Too often you get kind of a little mamby-pambiness in these interactions, you know, where you're trying to negotiate and I'm trying to stop this and you're being crazy, you're insane. There was really none of that. That I don't know, Mark, what did you feel about all of this?
So I thought this was a really cool scene, especially when all of the Skrulls appeared as Gravik around them to sort of threaten him. Like, I was not expecting that. I guess I didn't remember that from the trailer. That was pretty intense, and I like the sort of analogies they're making to when he was talking about the painting of all of the world leaders in World War I, how they would just sit back and, relax and live in luxury while other people went off and died for their benefit, and sort of saying that he's more, and that he's sort of making that comparison to Talos and saying that he's more of the grunt who's in there, who experiences the war personally. And so that was interesting. And I liked, of course, Talos's, what he was saying about how humanity is at its most, when they're threatened, their biggest threat, which is actually in the MCU has been shown to be true. So that is something he needs to take into advice. But I really don't see the point of what's the point of the parlay? Like, why did he request me to parlay if he's just going to sit there and threaten them? And when Gravik is like, oh, well, I should just kill you right here. Why doesn't he? I can't think of any reason why he wouldn't. And if he's surrounded by all those Skrulls, why wouldn't he just simply kill him? And so you could say, oh, the whole point of the parlay was so that he could get that information from Gaia at the, gives him the phone or whatnot, bullshit that happens when he walks out of the building. But still, it's like, why would he request to meet Gravik specifically? It seemed like he could threaten him just so he could do all these threats and like humans gonna beat you or whatever, which obviously is not gonna work on the reticle like Gravik. So it seemed like the whole point of the scene was kind of, I couldn't find the point to it. It was cool. It looked cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I could see how Gravik's motivation for the parlay is basically as an additional way to set up Gaia and find out if she is the traitor or not. But you're right. From Talos' standpoint, outside of just like, hey, man, you should not do this stuff, he doesn't really seem to get a whole lot out of that. Though with the other Skrulls showing up, perhaps that threw off his expected leverage. But Rob, you were definitely acknowledging all of those points right there.
Yep. Because I mean, we talked about this last week about how the one scene kind of felt like Pacino and De Niro and Heat, and by that I mean two guys who haven't really done anything, been in scenes together, to do anything in the MCU really together, or in their own careers. So you get these scenes where you get these guys, like the good guy, bad guy, cliched meetup, and again, it's just something rehashed. What's the point of this scene, like in any of those scenes, when you know that both of them are just going to leave with just more conviction about what they're doing? And
right.
Talos's like big trigger always being anybody says anything about his daughter. Shit, man, Nick should have been exploiting that. Like every time they walk into a room with a Skrull, I'll be like, man, you should have just heard what he said about her. You would what? And then Nick wouldn't have to shoot nobody. But also, if this is a guy with nothing left to lose, why is he not thinking, if I kill this dude, I save my daughter, I don't care if I die. Without that, cut the head off the snake, they're not going to know what to do. It's gonna fall apart, and the world leaders will go running back to their positions, because not only are they are in this because right now they feel like they have an opportunity. Without him, their opportunity goes away, and they have successful lives already. They'll just wait for the next, opportunity.
Yeah.
And if they have to change personalities or whatever, they will. And they'll find another way to do it. Like, they've been successful in what they're doing. So, like, he really wants to do this. Like, that's your moment. And it's the second time that he's done it. First, he let her leave with the bombs that he thought were bombs. And now he's letting the guy he could have stopped. And again, the plot is driving this story, not the character.
Right.
There is character in this show, but it's not the main driving force.
Right. It would have made more sense than that if the surrounding Skrulls pulled Talos off and he was like, nah, let him go. We said we would parlay, as an excuse to reasoning of why he's actually there, to try and trap Gaia. But you're right. From the other standpoint, it would make a lot more sense for Talos to just kind of take him out there. I do love the stabbing in the hand. Again, that's a nice committed moment. But obviously what we see is the point of all of this is to show that Gravik is now a super Skrull, or a Skrull with powers, as he now has Extremis from Iron Man 2 in his system, which is the glowing healing bit that we get out of that.
One thing I did forget to mention is another thing I'm not happy about with this show is the whole super Skrull thing. Like, I know that's something from the comics, but it seems a bit goofy as portrayed here. So,
well, actually,
I mean, they might do a good job with it, but like the concept of it, like, oh, these scientists coming up, it's like, and it seems like that's his plan. He was inferring to deal with the Avengers, but yeah, I don't know. I'm worried it's going to lead to some very stereotypical the hero fighting villain with the same powers Marvel third act thing that we've seen trillions of times before.
Yeah, that would definitely be disappointing. The one thing that I am kind of curious about is in the previous scene when he does introduce these to the rest of the council, and he's got the machine, and he does the "will be super Skrulls." Eh? Eh? I mean, I like the line, but yeah, it is a little obvious, I have to say. He does say something like, our powers were changing identities, now we'll be changing powers. So we see that he actually has the extremists in his system now. But I'm wondering if the limitation they're looking to put on this is you can only have one at a time. And that you can then change which power that you have and so on. The Super Skrull famously has all the powers of the Fantastic Four in him. So he's got 4 sets of powers and going on. And we do see the multiple lines of heroes, and Groot and the Frost Beast and the Extremists and Cull Obsidian, all having samples collected. So my expectation would be those are all in him. But I am sort of curious if that might be the limitation, or something that they do with that is, or maybe some Skrulls will get one power and he gets them all. Yeah, so that was the one thing that I was kind of curious if they're going to play with as a sort of limitation, is you can only have one at a time. But yeah. Yeah, let's get off to that handoff real quickly, which I thought was kind of cool, of Gaia showing up and bumping into Talos as the old man and dropping the phone and handing it to him, and then having to scurry in front of Gravik as he comes out to run around the van and go stand in front of the car before Gravik can catch Gaia. It's a small little spycraft thing, but I thought that it was kind of fun. And again, flip phone. My God, you just pass a note at that point if you're going to actually run into them. But I get it that you drop this. That makes a little bit more sense. So, yeah. And then what this leads us to is, of course, one of the 2 kind of phenomenal, in my mind, Nick Fury Talos scenes, where Fury approaches Talos having breakfast in the bar, where, again, Talos taking no shit at all. I love how he's kind of like, "Oh, what is it, Fury? What do you want? What are you telling me this for? No, I'm gonna have to have you use your words and actually ask me, tell me that you need my help." Which I thought was great, because like nobody talks shit to Nick Fury. You get the idea that nobody does. I mean, outside his wife and Rhodey and Talos and everyone else who's running into him in this series. But he's not someone that anyone typically talks trash to. There's always a kind of an expectation that Fury is in this position of power. And here we really see where that switch off is that, and even Fury quickly acknowledging the fact that you're right. I need your help because I can't get this done without you. Which I thought was beautifully done. And again, and it's the smallest nice little touch to that is after Fury says those words, Talos is just little reach out and touch his arm as he pays the bill. He pays the bill and he just pats his arm like, "Okay, man, of course, we're on the same side. I just needed you to acknowledge that." But it was such a quick, friendly, almost intimate gesture there. I thought that was just one of those perfect little bits where, was it written in the script, or was that something that Ben Mendelsohn just came up with as that energy character working with Sam Jackson in that scene? Like, this is how we would wrap this up and put it behind us. Because while they stab at each other kind of with little points back and forth further on, this really does resettle a lot of their relationship between that and the fun conversation in front of Bob's house. But yeah, Mark, how you've been saying one of the things that have been really good with you in this show is the work between Ben Mendelsohn and Sam Jackson. And how did this all play out for you? What stuff did you?
Yeah, I think it was. Well, I guess I would specify. I think there's this episode that I like the interactions between Talos and Nick Fury. Particularly this scene I thought was really good. But there was the scene in the previous episode with Nick Fury and Talos in the train car when Nick Fury lost his shit. I didn't like that scene. Like, I didn't buy it. Like, I understand he would be upset over the fact of revelation that there's millions of Skrulls on Earth, but for him to just be like, oh, fuck you, I'm out of here, when he should know right then and there that he fucking needs Talos badly. And so that felt like a really bad judgment call. That's something that Nick Fury shouldn't do. Shouldn't be that naive or blinded by anger. But this scene does go a little bit and sort of make me feel better about that, because I do like how Nick Fury has to eat crow. And I do like how he comes up and his assumption is, oh yeah, well, here's some information, you can go solve it for me. And Talos rightfully points out, after the way you treated me, you expect me to just pick up and do whatever the hell you want. And so when, Talos says, like, I want you to say that I'm nothing and I'm wrong and I need you because I can't do this myself. And then Nick Fury gets up to leave. And I really thought that he was going to make, oh, fuck you then and leave, because that would be in line with how his character has been acting so far. Not how he should be acting, but how he should be acting is what he does do when he actually comes back and then repeats the words to him. So I and again, the actors nail it. Like the chemistry between them is so good. So overall, I did like this scene a lot. I just think it was kind of how I got to it from the previous scene or previous episode. I didn't like, but I liked eventually where we got.
Right. That previous scene had to happen to give us this scene, because that's the breakup and this is the makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is true. Rob, any thoughts on this?
That was really good. I mean, I don't really have much else after that, because it's just, I just wrote Vince and Jules talk about dogs.
Well, and that's the one right afterwards, which again is also, I think, really good, where you have Talos Brill showing up like, hey man, come on, you think you've been cleaning up our messes? We've been saving your butt and putting you up the corporate ladder effectively for years, and really spells it out for him, I think, beautifully. It's like, any bit of intel you got, that was from us. Anytime that you had strength over someone that nobody else did, that was from us. Anytime these things happen, that was from us. And even as he does it with that kind of, again, almost friendship point, is like, and look, I don't even want to thank you. It was my pleasure to do it. But again, like the acknowledgement scene before is, yeah, but just don't tell me shit when I'm sitting right next to you. Yeah.
I think this scene I love this scene again, probably even more, because I think it goes a long way of developing Talos' character, making me buy his motivations. Because I didn't, especially in his guest appearance in, was it Far From Home, when he was pretending to be Nick Fury?
Yeah.
Like, he seems like Nick Fury's like lapdog. Like, he was just go and do all this stuff, but it's like, why is he doing this? Like, it seems like Nick Fury hadn't really earned this sort of loyalty, so I think he spells out exactly, why he's doing it, and wants Nick Fury to acknowledge that he would basically be nothing without them, and how much Nick Fury is dependent on them. And I love how he just nails them with it repeatedly, and to the point where Nick Fury kind of has to deflect and just be like, oh, are you done talking? Because we're here. Like, that was a good way to sort of end that scene. But and yeah, just the back and forth between them, even how it continues into the next scene, I think is brilliant. It's character chemistry, good actor chemistry. I think it's definitely the strength of the show for me.
Yeah, by far. And we get the setup of what we have at the afterwards conversation from Bob is, why are you here? Why aren't you with Gravit? Because I'm with you. And that's it. It's like that really nails down as much as Talos is driven, he is a Skrull of his word. You know, when he picks a side and he does that, that is the one that he is with. And I think again that kind of simplifies it. Even when he hits the thing, it's like, God, after 30 years, you still don't understand.
Oh yeah, that was a good
I'm
one.
with you. Yeah, which I think was just all sort of beautifully done. Bill Casey's in the chat. Watch Nick Fury be a Skrull sent by Nick Fury for no reason. That would mind warp us all, Bill.
Oh, no, believe me, one of those conversations that I had was about what if Fury actually told another Skrull that you got to be me. This was one of those theories that we came up with. It was like, you know, they just put me in one of your pods, change your face, take my memories, let me out. I'm gonna go dip with Captain Marvel, and then it just so happens that as soon as he leaves, big old Earth emergency, replacement Nick Fury sitting there going, shit. So he knows everything he's got to know, but he's taking the whole, I got to play it this way, go down there, blah, blah, blah. And watch Nick Fury and Captain Marvel both show up at the end of this. He comes walking out like with the old classic trench coat and the eye patch looking all badass. And the old guy sitting there going, you know, like the old version of Fury just,
Yeah. And Eric Scott, your question about Guy, we will definitely be getting into shortly. I have not forgotten what you wrote there. But we'll take a little side trip with Bob, going after Bob, the Commodore of the British ship, which of course, as we see from the beginning, that's what the Skrulls are doing. They're going to infiltrate their ship to shoot down a UN plane, and they've got to get the code word from Bob to shut it all off. You know, again, kind of a fun scene. We get Skrull Bob talking shit to Talos, and we get Skrull Bob pushing Talos's buttons enough to get shot, which kind of leads to a whole secondary bit. But one of the interesting things that I did find in this whole sequence is, of course, Talos isn't going to shoot a kid, but that doesn't mean Nick Fury won't. And also, for a Skrull, he's very attached to his kid. He gives up Talos to save his kid, even though he's the Skrull pretending to be the dad and not the actual dad.
Yeah, that's what confused me about that scene. Like, if that wasn't really his kid, why would he give a shit? Is that they're trying to say that is his kid, that the kid is a Skrull? Like, that's the only way this makes sense for me.
Sure. And that is a reasonable, I think that's a sort of a reasonable question right there. Because we don't know how long that he's been replaced for. We do know that we get to see him as Gaia goes to look for his memory in order to get the release code. But yeah, that was kind of the one interesting thing in this whole scene where I'm like, is it a Skrull kid? Is it a half Skrull kid? Is he just playing that role really strongly and can't step away from it?
nothing will stop this plot from getting to where it needs to go, Gary. Nothing.
Yeah. I don't know. I would be curious if they kind of address this at any point later on in the future, because that is the one thing about this whole scene. I love the kind of back and forth and so on. And again, the fact that Talos's weak spot definitely is his daughter, because you talk shit about his daughter, it puts him off on edge. We saw it in the scene with Gravik. We see it here. This, in fact, gets him to shoot Bob, but that means that he has to effectively expose Gaia in order to get the information to expose us, because it's the phone call that he gives in order to go in and get the code word from Bob's memory. I know he's got a real name, but I'm just going to call him Bob because that's all they referred to him as. In this, which again sets up the whole final scene and cliffhanger there with Gaia. Or I guess not cliffhanger, because she definitely gets shot. She definitely turns into the Skrull body, definitely turns into a Skrull. So we can have the assumption that she is dead. which is a bold move for the show to do. And it is, and I do kind of like the fact, one, that Gravik's plan was to just, yeah, the plane would be interesting, but the important thing is to get rid of the mole, which is true. The fact that he shoots her before she even finishes her shit-talking conversation. Who's the mega danger? Is it this or is it you? You know, I kind of like that. And I like the boldness of taking out another character, of building those stakes. The only question is, are you really taking out Emilia Clarke after 3 episodes like that? I know there's a lot of people that have looked at like the preview stuff, and there seems to be scenes that she was in that we haven't seen yet. So there's question of why she might be dead. I think also because we get the hint of the extremis when Talos gets stabbed in the hand. It doesn't happen immediately. He's got to pull it through, and then it comes up and heals after Talos leaves. Is that something we're going to see with Gaia? Because she has seen the machine. She does know kind of the research. Did she super Skrull herself and is going to, you know, extremis herself back to life after this?
Honestly, I really, truly hope not. I think that would be a very bad direction. It would be the cheesy direction to go with. I'm curious to see Talos' reaction upon learning about her death.
Yes.
I think that's going to be very powerful. And I think it would be more powerful if they did keep this character dead. But if you're telling me there's other scenes with Emilia Clarke that was in the trailers, and that has me worried that they're not. Could be flashbacks.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't know. I'm worried that they won't, but I think that they should. Just keep her dead.
Well, look, and we can definitely throw for Rob here, but if we're not going to get justice for Maria Hill, why should we have justice for Gaia? You're going to shoot Maria Hill.
Yep. No. I mean, you get shot once, you're dead. That's the freaking rules. You get shot once, you're dead. I didn't write the rules. The show did.
Well, and there's enough talk about how nobody dies in the MCU. There's enough talk about that there isn't that death in the MCU is not a permanent thing, that people are always coming back, and that if it's going to be a joke like that, kind of need to not do that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is also, the risk the MCU is falling into.
When she went in to get the memory, to get the code, right? And she's looking through and she's really paying attention to this guy's life, right? This guy's memories. And she does that thing where I thought at first she was turning to look at someone off screen, like turning to see someone standing there. But it was that she was looking at the guy in the pod. And she was looking at him and having these like feelings and emotions. And I was like, why even put that there? Because not the part where she's taking the code out, but when she looks all meaningful at the dude. Because if you're just going to kill her in the next scene, what did that mean for her? You know what I mean? Like she felt something, boom, you're dead, doesn't matter. And and the whole thing about what's it going to make Talos feel, it's just going to go all the way back to, you left us, and because of all this, now my daughter's dead. And then he'll also go after Gravik, and it's just going to be more whipping Sam Jackson about how he put them in this position, and it's going to be motivation for him to finally stop being the diplomats and maybe do something about it. And at that point, yeah, I really don't. It undercuts if she does come back. In all seriousness, like I can joke about that, but like she should be dead, because if we're really going to have stakes, this is going to be impactful and everything else, then she needs to go too. I think it's also what you would do in for misdirection. You put Emilia Clarke in here and you do think she's going to survive the whole thing, and she doesn't. that's also shocking. That also gets people talking about things, because if she can die too, then really, and not even be worried about the whole Skrull thing, just removing a piece off the board, it's a huge thing. So for her to just kind of show up all of a sudden afterwards, and it takes away from his motivation to get things done, because we've only got 3 episodes left now. We do know from other things, like, there is going to be some ramping up of like big things, a couple of big things happening. And also the scenes that people are talking about, I think a little of it might be taken out of these trailers. If you look at them, or if you take them out, if you really look, she might not even be in those scenes you're talking about. And it wouldn't be the first time they've doctored things to make it look like they're going to be bigger than they are, because the more you make it look like somebody's being a big character, then you off them. Or like some movies try to sell you on an actor that's in a movie, like say Bruce Willis or all these guys who essentially filmed all their stuff in a day, that kind of thing, So they do all kinds of things to get you to like get suckered in. And I think that in Amelia's case, I think a lot of it was just marketing so that people would be like, "Ooh, Daenerys is back and Marvel now," And I think it's really cool if she's actually dead.
Yeah, I think it would be a bold step. Alyssa Jean in the chat here, who will be joining us on screen next week, folks, also believes that Gaia is 100% still alive, and that it's silly to even pretend that she's dead. But Eric brings up also in the chat something, what might be interesting? If another Skrull impersonates Gaia, which was something that I thought about, Eric.
Yeah.
The one thing is again, kind of like as Marc says, is we don't have backstory. As far as we know, she doesn't have any allies in Skrullland there, in New Skrulla, I guess is what they called it. So who would impersonate her to give her cover while she got away somewhere else? I think that's entirely a possible thing to do, and would be an interesting move, except again, we don't know if the only connection that she had with anyone, I think, would have been Beto, who was the new recruit that she kind of guided through in some levels. But he's off on the ship. So he's definitely not in Russia there at the nuclear plant. So that may be an interesting, as opposed to giving her extremists, if they want to kill, if they want to have her survive, is have someone else impersonate her. And I would, again, be almost okay with that, except we don't see why anybody would do that.
I'd be fine with that as long as the character herself is dead. I still think, I don't know. My reaction after watching that is that she's definitely dead. So if they show that she's not, then I will be disappointed. And I think it will be a bad move. That's just me personally. Now, I did want to get back to the scene you touched on earlier with Nick Fury infiltrating Commodore Bob's house. Because I love this scene. This is another part of the episode I really like. We get a kind of a callback to Captain Marvel, because he finds out that the Bob was impersonating Talos because he called him Nick, which is exactly how he knew that Talos was a Skrull in Captain Marvel, because nobody calls him Nick or Nicholas or anything. And so that was cool, and I like that, and I like how how you pointed out that he's not fucking around, that he just shows up with this little kid and threatens to kill him. But then, and how Commodore Bob was refused to tell them the code or whatever, and they tried everything, and Nick Fury started torturing. Now, this is the one thing I didn't really understand, is why Talos was so hard set against Nick Fury torturing him. He was like, "No, we don't do that." And then all of a sudden Commodore Bob says, "Well, maybe your daughter's the traitor." Boom. Like that part of it, I don't know if I really, I didn't like how he was like, "No, we don't do this sort of thing." I think their best bet would have been to get the information from him. But again, it was very clear that he'd rather die than give them that information. And maybe Nick Fury could have called his bluff and killed his son, but then that wouldn't be such a great Disney Plus show.
That's not a good Disney Plus decision right there.
He would make it the best Disney Plus show. Are you kidding me? Because they would really be able to say, "We did it. We shot a kid in the head."
Well, one, I think there's a certain level of good cop, bad cop. They might be playing with Bob there a little bit. Especially since Nick shoots him in the knee. It was like, that's it, I'm going to give you 3 seconds to do it. And Talos would be like the plain good cop. Hey, man, give me a minute and I'll deal with it. But I also think that, from episode 1, when he got very upset that Nick killed the Skrull that was attacking him, that was the dirty bomb maker, is I don't think, and this may be the reason why he didn't kill Gravik in the earlier scene, is I don't think that Talos wants to kill another Skrull. I think he really doesn't want to make that step. And I think that might have been that line for him is, he was concerned that Nick might shoot another Skrull again. So he's like, why don't you get out? I'll take care of this. But he just got his buttons pressed too much. And again, threatening his daughter or bringing her up. Because he does say, or is your daughter the filthy traitor that sent you over here? Threat of exposure for protection. He has to kill him.
Yeah, no, I totally buy that. Like, yeah. And it's also, but the thing is that this was like high stakes. Like, the event that's about to start World War III is about to happen unless they find out this code. And so that's why I don't buy his, oh, no, don't hurt, bullshit, because the stakes are too high for that, I think. But also, it does also make sense why he calls Gaia and and why she blows her cover, because the stakes are just that high. Right. Which is exactly what Gravik was hoping for, like what he was planning on. So that I liked. I think this all works out. It was planned for very well. Now, one thing I did just think of, getting back to a Skrull impersonating Gaia, I thought of an avenue they could go with that would make a lot of sense, is what if they hide the fact that she's dead and instead have her Skrull impersonate her and go to Talos, pretending to be her daughter and to get more information for him, kind of like a double agent sort of thing.
You're right. That would be an interesting way to do that, to switch it all around, is have the traitor betray, put the betrayed, or you know what I'm saying? Yes, exactly. But you were right to bring up the whole like Nick question, because if we remember back to last week, that's what Rhodey kept calling Fury, was Nick, and so
really?
That could have been the sign for Fury to go, oh, this isn't actually Rhodey, this is a Skrull impersonating him, which would be a nice kind of subtle backplay there, and how he knows that there is a high-ranking Skrull. Right.
So we're going to talk about this theory that Rhodey's the Skrull, because I will say I'm not on board with this theory.
Yeah, no, let's throw that, because we do have the final scene with Priscilla getting the phone call and then going and getting a gun out of the security box and then talking on the phone. And that's definitely Don Cheadle on the phone. And she said, can I speak with Gravik? Well, you're speaking with me. That obviously puts him in the line of the knowledge and the know of what's kind of going on. So, I don't know. To me, it's a very obvious play out there between the Nick reference before, the fact that Rhodey seemed to act a little strange just there to fire Nick, fire Fury. And then we get this voice here. To me, kind of plays this out. But why doesn't this work for you, Mark? I'm really curious.
Well, I think I missed that line. Maybe I was missing this is where he said, you can't speak to Gravik, so you're speaking to me.
That's what when Priscilla was on the phone after she pulled the gun out of the.
All right, because I was wondering why everyone was making the connection that the person on the phone was working for Gravik. Because I was thinking maybe she's just working for Rhodey on his own agenda, not necessarily being attached to Graphic or anything. But then that line, which I didn't catch, is apparently what is leading everyone to. So in that case, I'd have to reconsider my position. Maybe he is, but I don't know. I don't know. Like, I just don't want him to be a Skrull.
Sure.
I guess it just seems too obvious and too simple, and kind of going along with what Rob is saying about the show, just where the plot's driving everything, and
Right.
it's kind of predictable. And there needs to be more to this show than simply, oh, this person you thought is actually a Skrull. Like, they need to do more with that. Than simply, oh, but maybe they could. Like, maybe they could reveal that Rhodey's a Skrull and they could do more with it. Possibly.
Right.
But, I don't know. I guess now I learned about that line. Maybe I'm more on board with that theory. But I thought it would have been more interesting if she was just working with, like, Rhodey himself as going against Fury.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, and I think this puts in the point is, like, Priscilla going to portray her husband now? Is she going to side with the Skrulls as opposed to Nick Fury on this, which she seemed to kind of downplay in the beginning, and yet she also said, hey, how did I grieve? I became a widow, and I became me, the me I was before I met you. And again, she was the one that introduced Gravik to Fury. So they definitely have this long connection beforehand. They could be playing that she wants to get a hold of Gravik because she doesn't want him to do his plan and to save Nick and whatever. I guess my biggest surprise is honestly that Nick Fury is still alive and has not been killed by other Skrulls or his wife or anyone else. By this point.
I was going to bring up another possibility. Maybe the person on the front is a Skrull impersonating Rhodey, but not necessarily implying that the Rhodey out there is a Skrull. There could be just some, maybe he was just impersonating Rhodey for that one phone call or whatever.
Sure. Those are possibles. I mean, again, a good spy thriller should have us ask these questions. But I think sometimes that it's making those questions a little, obvious at this point. Or it just like make everyone suspicious and then we'll sort it all out later, because that gives a whole lot for the show to be responsible for by the time it wraps up. And with only 3 episodes left, that's a lot of ground to cover, as well as completing this story on top of everything else. All right. Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap things up? I think we've kind of hit all of the points and expectations of where we're going to go. I definitely hope this does sort itself appropriately. I would like to see some more powered stuff. We definitely have to see a more powered Gravik and his plan. We have to have a little bit more of an actual assault on the security of the country. That's the one thing about the plane. I didn't know anything about the plane beforehand. I didn't know anybody that was on the plane outside of seeing a side shot of a plane with United Nations on the side of it. To me, that's where the stakes on this was. Like, I know where they wanted to go, but it wasn't quite as high as it would because I had no connection with anything else that was going on that end. So I'm hoping whatever they do next is going to be a little bit more in our face and have us kind of feel that threat a little bit more than sub-launching on plane.
Well, I mean, I think I felt the danger there. It wasn't so much you were worried about any individuals. It was like this was a catalyst to start World War III. Sort of that would get the Skrulls closer to their goal of wiping out humanity. So I think the threat was real.
Okay. Good. Rob, any final thoughts there?
The only thing I have left to say is something I was thinking about before, and I don't know if it really matters, but going with like what Mark you were talking about, like the beginning and the whole thing with the wife and everything, and it just doesn't feel earned. And that, there was a way to do this so that it was earned, or at least so that we would have gotten everything in one episode that would have made it feel earned. And that's if these were actually episodes. I saw the episode that this was supposed to be, if this was actually an episodic show and not just a movie cut up between big moments. And in the episode when Nick Fury, they cut to black to tenderness, the next episode should have been all about their relationship, how this all happened. And when you can tell that these aren't episodes, it's, even if it's because it's being done for financial reasons, try to still do it episodically. So make your movie like that. Have a whole chunk of your movie be that part, so that things make sense. Because we'll watch it anyway. Because most people don't know the difference between an episodic show and what they're doing here. So they really are ways for them to earn all these things. They're just choosing not to do it, and that's lazy.
Yeah, I concur on that. I think that one scene we got at the start of the episode with a flashback with Nick and Priscilla meeting, it's not good enough. Like, I still feel disconnected from these characters. Like you were saying, she has the gun. Is she going to betray Nick Fury? I was like, I might care if I had any investment in their relationship, but I don't feel it because I don't think they earned it.
I think there's a real limitation with having this set 6-episode structure for all of the Marvel TV shows. I mean, I know Daredevil next year is supposed to be tons of episodes, and I'm very excited about that, and that's going to be great. Yay. But I do wish that they would do a little bit more time. And again, they could have used that 10-15 minutes to do a big chunk of their story, and that might have even worked if they stuck that in here. But you're right, Rob. I think doing an episode that would have focused a lot more on that, or even some of that is the one limitation that I don't like, is we're getting these piecemeal looks into the past that'll to tie into that one episode in order to give us just enough information to go forward with. But I think there's a certain dissatisfaction with that, and I can totally agree. I am, however, still enjoying the heck out of this series. I am looking forward to next week. My only downside is, like, there's only 3 episodes left. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of ground that has to be covered in these 3 episodes. And I like the stakes of them killing characters. While I love Maria Hill, I understand the stakes of killing her. While I like Gaia and Emilia Clarke playing her, that would be an appropriate stake. And if you undercut that by bringing the character back, I think you do a disservice to the stakes that you're trying to portray out there. But yeah, that's all I got here.
So I'll say about this show overall is on track to be a solid 7 out of 10, unless something changes to make it worse or better. So far, that's what I think it's on track for.
All right, perfect. Well, Marc, why don't you let people know where they can find you, and if there's anything you want to tell them about what you're doing before we wrap this up.
So yeah, my channel is Enchantment of Eternity. At the moment, I'm covering Star Trek. I'm covering Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It's coming out week to week. I'm just about to upload my review for the latest episode. I'm going back and covering every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. That's season 1, which is not so good, but covering that at the moment. And doing other sorts of various videos and whatnot. I know I'll be doing another live stream about Star Trek with Darren. Sorry, over here next month. But yeah, so yeah, that's what's going on in Enchantment of Eternity.
Awesome. Rob, what you up to? Where can people find you?
Oh, I'm just right here. I'm right here. And Justice for Maria. That's it. Like, it was a great conversation. It was a much better conversation about an episode that I wasn't that keen on. So I'm glad that we actually, I can see some things better a little bit now about this episode that are a little bit better, but I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one seeing the things that are wrong with it. And I was probably a little too strong to say I don't look forward to this show, because even with like shows like She-Hulk, I wanted to like every episode every episode I was hoping that something would change my mind. It doesn't always happen, but I still think that every time I watch a new episode of something, there's a chance for it to redeem itself. So I'm still looking forward to this, but my expectations went from hopeful to all right. So, yep, this is where you'll find me right now.
Excellent, excellent. And of course, I'm D. This is my channel. D's Reviews will be here every week, at least the next 3 weeks, covering up the final episodes of Secret Invasion. And want to big thanks out to Eric Scott, Bill Casey, Elisa Jean joining us live in the chat. Always a wonderful discussion. Big thanks to everybody joining us in the archives. We are here Thursday nights at 6 o'clock Pacific. Alyssa Jean from Alyssa Jean's Reviews will be joining Rob and I next week to talk about the next episode. Very excited about that. We hope you can join us. And thanks so much for your time. And we'll catch you all next time. Take care. And hold on, gotta clear this for Rob. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Justice for Maria Hill. Oh, God, they gotta hit me with so many buttons. I thought I was doing that in a cool ending. Now